What a handsome crowd. Oh, thank you for being here. So we don't have much time, so we're going to start in really quickly to address our themes from a really interesting perspective. We have the heads of two extremely important and well-known disruptor brands here. I'm going to let Victor, I'm not going to let you introduce yourself because I'm going to tell people that you're Victor and that this is Brian. But why don't you tell us a bit about RxBar and Brian a little bit about Mack Weldon.
Certainly. Hello, everybody. My name is Victor Lee. I'm the CMO and head of product development for RxBar. If you're not familiar with us, we're a 6-year-old company. It's a protein bar, but it was built a little bit different because, as you understand, protein bars, it's a pretty big aisle. What we'd like to say is what you see on the front of the label is really what you eat. Nothing artificial, no added sweeteners, and you can see it with a clean label right in the front. And that's as basic and simple as it gets with no BS if you're familiar with our brand.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Berger. I'm the founder and CEO of Mack Weldon. We are a digitally native menswear brand focused on premium basics, socks, underwear, undershirts, tees, and more recently, sweats and polos, wardrobe essentials. We launched about 7 years ago with a mission to reinvent men's basics. And to us, it really meant 3 things. The first was delivering real product innovation. We spent a lot of time on fabric and fabric development and fabric innovation. The second is being digitally native, and that's not just that we're largely e-commerce driven. It has to do with how we think about and utilize data to drive every aspect of our business. And then the last piece is being direct to consumer. Many of the incumbent brands in our categories have historically sold their products through third-party retailers. And in our view, that was missing a big opportunity to create a connection with customers around products where there's a lot of loyalty.
So you're in 2 utterly different product categories. Underwear and protein bars are very different from each other. But there is one extraordinarily big similarity between your companies. You're both founded on similar principles, really about transparency and honesty. And I'm just wondering, just from a founder's insight, or from the CMO insight, what was the essential insight that made you believe that that these were principles that would allow you to take on bigger competitors, to found something and take on bigger competitors?
Well, for me, it was really about this kind of customer connection. All of the big brands that were in the category were typically either sold, they were all sold through some form of third-party retailer, largely department stores. And the marketing was kind of strange. It was all really about these kind of sexually charged lifestyle advertising campaigns. And none of that really resonated for me as a consumer. Like, these are products that you wear underneath your clothes, they touch your skin, you have a intimate relationship with them and sort of how you feel throughout the day. And so
the Mark thing never worked for you.
I mean, I thought he was cool. I wanted to, have those muscles, but I really was looking more for a message that aligned with companies like Lululemon and Nike and Under Armour that were really sort of speaking to the things that I cared about as a customer. So a big part of our piece was really not only being direct to consumer in that we were actually selling the product directly to the customer and having that opportunity to have a long-term relationship, but it was also how we speak to and engage the customer.
Victor, I mean, you're still sold primarily in stores more than DTC.
It's a mix of both, yes.
So, but transparency and honesty are the kind of like the essence of the product itself. Where did that insight come from?
That's basically how it started, because Peter Rahal, who's the founder, him and his partner Jared Smith, Peter was a big CrossFitter, and when he was done, he wanted a snack. And as he was going through the bar aisle, he would, as normal consumers would be, attracted to a package, color, saying, familiarity with the brand, grab it, and as 78% of consumers do, they look on the back. So he looked on the back, and that was that moment. And we built a company, and we still hold true to it today of we make things that solve a problem. And the problem he had was the honesty of what the product was, the ingredients, how it's made. And everything promises X, but the reality is the promise gets smaller and smaller once you discover the truth. And he believed if you took real, simple ingredients, you actually can make something that's tasty, healthy, and nutritious. And if you look at it, we have 17 flavors of our core bar line. We also have nut butters. But if you look on the core bar line, in the back on the ingredients, not one flavor has more than 10 ingredients. And that's unheard of. If you flip over some of the other protein bars, some have 27. And if you look at, there's no added sugar. There's sweetener that's naturally sweetened based on dates. And the protein, we tell you, it's simple. He built it on a simple promise. Egg whites for protein, and dates to bind, and nuts for texture. That's it. And one of our bars, I believe it's peanut butter, 5 ingredients. Like, that's unheard of. That's the honesty about it. And that's why the no BS line was done. It's like, there's no filler, no frills, no BS. Call us on it. We want you to look at the back.
So I want to ask you about, because this is an audience of advertisers, agency people, a lot of people who depend on advertising in one way, shape, or form. So I want to ask you about voice. But before I do that, I want to ask just a completely blunt question. Do you think now, as proprietors or as stewards of pretty important growing companies, do you think that advertising is inherently dishonest?
Well, in full disclosure, I used to work at Digitas too. But I do it to a degree, because advertising marketing holds true to what it's always been. You're trying to evoke an emotion of with somebody. Now, the line or the gray of what you're doing to evoke the emotion, that's where it gets testy. Is it dishonest purposefully? No. But does it play to something that if it's done right, that a consumer may be emotional towards? Yes. Is it dishonest? Depends on what you're looking at. But you can't make a claim. We're not going to say our bar can make you a world-class athlete. Nobody would do that. That would be dishonest. What we try to do is say everything we're allowed to say, and that is truthful, and then let the consumer decide. Because in this day and age of social media, they're going to look up something. You can't just run an ad on TV and then have them believe you. It's not MASH where you can just play the TV ad and then, okay, I believe you and I'll buy it. No, they have everything at the palm of their hands to call bullshit on you.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the reasons that I was asking. I think that one of the most important books about advertising or marketing or culture, for that matter, for the past 50 years is Clue Train Manifesto. And it starts with the proposition that markets are conversations. And advertising and media historically were one way. They couldn't be conversations. Now they are or can be. I mean, you're involved. You're a DTC company up until a couple weeks ago. You're involved in a back and forth conversation. That's why I ask about that. Can you be one way and be honest, or are you just screwed if you're dependent on one-way communication these days?
No, I think, for us, I can only really speak about our experience. I mean, we do a lot of kind of more direct response driven. It's all branding or performance branding, Facebook calls it. But the kind of intention is really around getting a customer to take a specific action. And so a lot of our marketing tends to be kind of features and benefits driven, beautiful pictures, smart copy, but really about sort of whatever the kind of critical differentiators are in the product. And that is sort of inviting the conversation of like, call bullshit on us, right? And not only is it inviting the conversation, but the conversation's taking place right adjacent to the ad, right? If you're marketing in somebody's Facebook feed and you're saying, this boxer brief will make you leap tall buildings in a single bound, and you have, 40 comments about how it's crap and it ripped and it's worse than, the Hanes that you used to wear, then, we've got a problem on our hands, right? So in some respects, the channels regulate themselves in that you actually get penalized if you're not delivering the goods, right? And it ends up not performing and so on and so forth. So for us, we've really, we're a product-driven company, just like Victor's, and we really hang our hats on that. So if we're not doing what we say we're going to do, then we hope our customers hold us accountable for that.
I mean, how do you, because you're both involved in this back and forth, like a literal physical back and forth with substantial enough groups of your end consumers. How do you manage that? How do you manage this literal physical conversation, especially as you grow?
It's tough when you scale, but it actually is easy when your mind is right. Every employee, we have a little over 200 under RX. Obviously, we're not including kind of what Kellogg's does for us. But every employee does 2 weeks of service training. They pick up the phones every day. Matter of fact, I respond to consumers on social media with my personal handle upwards to a dozen times a day, because you have to talk to them. And even a couple times a week, if I have free time, I run to our service center and I'll pick up a phone call. And you have to have that dialogue. And if you don't, then you're just sitting on top of the mountain shouting down. And you have to make time for that. You have to make time for the consumers, all of them, no matter how big you are. You have to.
Brian, how do you do it?
And just building on that, I mean, we have a lot of connection to our customers through email, through social media, and through other channels. And so we're always trying to facilitate that dialogue, and we're really trying to make sure that employees across the company, regardless of which department you're in, really have that experience to know how decisions that we're making actually resonate with customers. But one thing I'll add is we just opened our first retail store at Hudson Yards a couple of weeks ago, which has been really exciting. The most exciting aspect of it is that we could I can go down there and have a regular dialogue with customers. We can host customer events there. We could send our employees down there to interact and dialogue with customers, and that has become a really exciting new development in terms of customer access.
So they're giving me the last question. It says up there, Randall, last question. In fact, if you turn around, you can even see that it says that. Just transparency and honesty, just kind of, the theme. So I actually, I thought this was a somewhat provocative way to, I'd like you to fill in the blanks as you think of your larger competitors. So if you were Calvin Klein, or you were Kraft Heinz, what would you tell them to spend, based on your experience, what would you tell them to spend the next 3 years doing?
Well, I'm from Boston, so I got the Bill Belichick, I don't talk about the competitors mentality. So, but since you're putting me on here, what actually I would say is in our industry, in food, and formerly I came from Hasbro, which is kind of the same as what happened yesterday won't work tomorrow. You have to be able to break stuff. And you have to be able to make the tough decisions, the quorum of 50 people to make a decision, to feel good and feel right. And if you're going to fail, go down epically, because if you play it safe, you're never going to get there. Like when you're I was having a conversation this morning with somebody, but if you're always going to play it safe and be in neutral, that means you're not moving. And a lot of companies, big companies, do that. They stay in neutral and they never get anywhere. You gotta take the chance and just throw caution to the wind sometimes.
The CEO of Calvin Klein called you up at 12:30 tonight and said, Brian, secret call, I'm a little stymied. What do you think I should be doing in 3 years? What would you tell?
I think humanizing the brand more. I think you create these kind of fake personas and experiences that you use to market the product and the brand. And I think one of the things that's resonating really well with consumers across a whole range of kind of DTC, fashion, beauty, apparel categories is the idea of kind of humanizing the brand and really bringing it down to a level that customers can actually relate to. And so at least specific to that brand and how they've marketed historically, I do think an element of kind of humanizing what they're doing and what they're about is going to be pretty important for any brand as kind of we go forward.
Great. Well, Victor Lee, Brian Berger, thank you. Digitas, everybody here, thank you.